Welcome back to the Church of Obelisk. My name is Yon. Today we're going to do another tier list video. This time we're going to talk about the mid lane. And as always with these videos, this is based mostly on just hard data. And specifically I'm looking at high level pub games. So not necessarily competitive play, but more like higher levels, Divine and Immortal level gameplay. Mostly because that is where balance actually matters. Whereas if you're down in like 1k, 2k, 3k, you can just pick whatever you want as long as you're comfortable in the hero. It's gonna be fine. But once you get up to like 5k, 6k, 7k, then it actually matters a lot what kind of heroes you pick. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So in our S tier, we're gonna have two heroes. The first one is a consummate mid hero, Tinker, just a very powerful hero. Tinker, typically a hero that's not very strong and competitive, but right now he's just so strong in this particular iteration of Tinker that he's even making it onto the main stage of TI. But in pubs, this hero just completely destroys, 55% win rate consistently here. And yeah, this is just an incredibly powerful hero. He doesn't really have many counters. And this hero, he does everything well. He's a strong laner, he farms fast, he pushes out waves, he has all this global presence, he has an amazing amount of lockdown once you get him like a hex. He can be a bit vulnerable when he gets jumped, and he's hard to play, obviously. So it's not a hero you can just pick up and play well right away, so it definitely requires a lot of practice, but if you're a good Tinker player, you're gonna love this patch. The next hero is Tiny. Of course, it's seen a lot at TI. This is primarily a carry hero in the current meta, but he's just so strong that even in the mid lane he's still S tier. It's just he's not really picked in the mid lane because like if you get Tiny in a competitive game, then you might as well put him into carry, which is the strongest role. But he's so strong right now that even in the mid lane, he's still going to be an ST hero. As always, this hero provides lots of nuke damage with the Avatos combo. And nowadays, thanks to the new shards, he also scales incredibly well. You no longer have a charge limit on tree grabs, so you're constantly hitting with all that bonus damage and all that splash damage from tree grabs, so you farm incredibly fast, take buildings incredibly efficiently. And as a mid laner, that's not quite as impactful, right? You're not going to have quite as much farm as a carry. And as a mid laner, you probably want to go for like a slightly different item build. You probably still want to go for like an Echo Saber. But after Echo Saber, you probably want like Blink. So like something like Treads, Echo Saber, Blink. And then at whenever you get 20, you get your shard. And then you probably go for like a BKB. But you're still going to scale incredibly well. And, once you have like a BKB, maybe like an AC, maybe like a Satanic, if it goes really late, you're still going to shred buildings. Still going to do lots of physical damage in team fights, as well as just having all that pick off with the, your Blink Dagger and all your spells. This hero is just plainly overpowered right now, so yeah. Also good as a mid laner. Next, we have the A tier, which are heroes that are not broken like the SD heroes, but very powerful and just sort of a little bit above average. First one is going to be Batrider. Very strong tempo control mid, farms decently well, and of course, very strong initiator. He has very solid win rates across all the sort of higher tiers. If you go on lower levels, he really falls off. So if you're down here in like 1k, 2k, 3k, Batrider probably not as strong because he does fall off. It's also not that easy or straightforward to play. But if you're like a 4k or above, I would say Batrider is a very powerful hero to play. And typically these days what Batriders do is they just go for very early boots of travel. They go into BKB and that just allows them to play very freely in the fights. And you might still get a Blink Dagger later on, but it's not an item you rush anymore, because if you just rush Blink Dagger, you're gonna fall off as Batrider. So just go for that Boots of Travel BKB build, and you're gonna be fine. Next, is a hero that most people probably would not rate as highly. Maybe this is my personal bias speaking here, but I think Visage is very powerful in this patch. His pick rate is quite low, but you know, his win rates amazingly high. So obviously, with the low pick rates, this is something that's played by Visage specialists, and that's why people picking him in the games where he's very powerful. But still, I think this hero is very underrated, and if you're looking for some sort of hero to learn that's a little bit outside the mainstream, Visage is an excellent bet. Also, just because he flies so much on the radar, he's probably not going to get nerfed anytime soon, even though I think he's actually really overpowered. But no one plays this hero, so he's not going to get nerfed. Next, you have TA, very classic mid laner. Her win rates are very solid. She's decently well picked, and just a solid overall mid laner. She can farm very fast. And she can also be better as a carry, but here in the mid lane is probably still her most common role. And this hero sort of needs a little bit of help to enable her. Like, you need to be able to get some stacks. You need a little bit of space at the start. But once you have like your Desto, your Blink Dagger, your BKB probably, you're going to be incredibly powerful. With a mid CA, probably we're not going to go for the Aghanims, or at least not go for that Aghanims very early. But still, this hero farms quite well and scales decently well for a mid laner. Next, we have Invoker, who is a very solid mid laner. You're almost always going to see the Quaswex build here nowadays, which just offers sort of tempo and has a lot of map presence just by being fast. You can gank other lanes. You're not going to have that Sunstrike at the start, but you're just going to move around the map. You're going to get an earn early. You're just going to get active. And he's just a very powerful team fighter. And after the earn, you can back up for a Hand of Midas to buff up your farm, or you can just go into something like Boots of Travel or Aghanims or something like that if you decide to play more aggressively. But most of the time, you're still going to get the Midas because you want to get all that experience. And just this hero, if it gets to the late game, even if it doesn't have the most farm, as long as you have levels, you're going to have so much impact in later fights with all those high level spells. Then we have Lina, who is an incredibly solid laner, really has no bad lane matchups, and many matchups where she just dominates. This hero also is able to provide a ton of damage. Typically these days on Lina, you want to go for more physical build. So at the start, we get like Boots of Travel, BKB. This allows us to participate in fights all over the map. Also allows us to farm more places around the map and sort of do a lot of damage with our magical stuff at the beginning without really investing items into the magical build. And then we can go into things like Shadow Blade. We can get just like straight damage items like MKB. We can get things like Skadi, and we're just gonna be building into a right clicker in the late game and provide lots of damage in the late game, as well as, of course, the control and the wave push and so on that Lina just naturally has. Next up, we have the Dawn of Pestilence, Necrophos, who is a very solid laner, obviously, can have a lot of impact with more like utility kind of build. Usually, you're gonna build tanky items, you're gonna get things like Greaves, and you might get like a pipe or something like that. You can also build into more like utility items. You can get something like an ATOS. You can get a Yules that you can use defensively to defend yourself, or to cancel TPs and so on, set up kills. You can get things like something like a Blink Dagger to catch up with people. You can get things like Lotus Orb, whatever your team needs to buy. You can also go from like more carry-ish and just go for Radiance and so on, but it's probably not recommended. Radiance in general, not the strongest item right now. But yeah, this hero is just a mid-game powerhouse. You can just delete people with the ultimate, and he just has very solid win rates. Next up, we have the Void Spirit, one of the Spirit Brothers. We've seen a lot of at TI. This hero has very solid laning and huge kill potential. He's very mobile. You see his win rates actually are kind of average across most of the brackets, but his pick rate is enormously high, would just why I put him into A tier. Just a very solid hero that if you just want to learn like one mid hero that you can just always pick, you might as well pick Voice Spirit, because you can't really counter this hero more or less, and he just fits into almost any lineup. So very solid hero. Next up, we have Medusa, who's not really a mid laner, like he's more like a position 1 who can be played either in the safe lane or the mid lane. So if you plan on picking in the mid lane, you sort of have to communicate with your safe laner and make sure that he's okay picking something a little bit less greedy. And then you might be able to play Medusa in the mid lane. And this is the main reason why she's only in A tier instead rather than S tier like in the carry tier list. But this hero is just excellent. You seem to have a decent amount of TI, but in sort of a bit less organized pop games, she's even stronger than in competitive. Because this hero just farms incredibly well, scales really, really well, and any sort of environment people are not really good at finishing up games, she's really going to excel. Co-op is also up here in the A tier, with a caveat that she is more like a higher level hero. If you're lower down tier, she's not as good, because she's a very high tempo hero. She tends to fall off if you're not having a good early game. And just in lower tier games, people are not typically finishing out games as fast, she can definitely fall off, but still very solid hero. Next up, we have Storm Spirit, another of these spirit heroes. Very powerful hero, but also kind of hard to play. So typically in lower tier games, he's not doing quite as well. But up here in Divine and Immortal, he has a very solid win rate with high pick rate. So it's up here in A tier. Next, we have Monkey, who's just one of the strongest heroes overall right now. Incredibly flexible, can be played in pretty much any role. But a mid laner is not really his forte in the current patch. But you can still pick him, especially if you like know what the enemy mid laner is going to be. If you know that you're going to be laning against, I don't know, some sort of Dragon Knight or whatever, then Monkey King is going to be quite strong. But if you're just like picking him blindly, don't know what the enemy mid laner is, there's much better heroes to pick. So it's very matchup dependent whether Monkey King is going to be a good mid laner or not. Then we've got Broodmother, kind of a cheesy hero still, despite all the changes. It's very low pick rate, but when she is picked, she's doing really well. Just your typical cheese hero, and you need to be, a good brood player. You can't just pick this hero up because it's a good brood game. You need to actually know how to play this hero. But in the right kind of game, she can still be very powerful. So it's very situational, but in those situations where she's good, she's really good. Next up, the B tier. This is sort of the heroes that are the middle of the pack. They're neither too strong nor too weak. You can definitely play these heroes if you like them, but if you're looking for some sort of new mid laner to learn, you probably shouldn't pick any of these heroes. You should probably stick with the S tier or the A tier. So first up, we're going to have Kunkka, the Admiral, a very solid mid laner, strong in the lane and strong in team fights, has some nice catch potential with the X, but the win rate is a little bit lacking, so that's why he's in the B tier, albeit at the very top of it. You've got Magnus, kind of similar situation. He's picked a lot, although usually not in mid lane. You've seen how strong this hero is at TI, but probably the off lane is a bit more comfortable for this hero. But he's just strong enough that he's still a decent mid laner. Then we have Huska, who's also a kind of cheesy hero. Actually has like a decent pick rate. I was surprised that it's that high. But yeah, his win rate is pretty solid. So I've put him into B tier because I'm not really convinced that this hero is in general strong. But in particular games where he excels, he can do really well. So that's why he's in here in high B tier. Next we have Viper, who is a little bit of a similar situation. He's also a hero that is good in particular matchups. So whenever you have some sort of hero that is vulnerable to another toxin, that relies on some sort of passive, Viper does well. If there's no such hero in the game, Viper just is a bit underwhelming. Obviously still a lane dominator, and he can still farm decently well. but you know, he's a bit situational, which is why he's in the B tier. The Wind Ranger, she's like alright, she's picked a lot, but you know, she's not amazing, but she's fine, so she's in B tier. Similar story for Leshrac. In particular kind of matchups, lineups, let's say you're facing like a Phantom Lancer, who's a hero that you know relies so much on illusions, and you just clear this very easily with your Pulse Nova. And then Leshrac is also good at taking objectives, so you can sort of put early pressure on the Phantom Lancer, take his towers, and yeah. So in these kinds of situations, Leshrac does really well. And but even if there's not like a specific counter, he's still a decent hero. So you know, speed here. Ember Spirit, another of these Spirit brothers, who we've seen a lot of TI, but outside of competitive play, he's not doing all that hot. He's picked a lot, but probably a bit overrated. With just across the board below average win rates, so I can't justify putting him any higher than B tier. Kind of the polar opposite of that is Arc Warden, a hero with very solid win rates, but his pick rate is quite low. He's a very situational hero. So yeah, in the games where Arc Warden is good, he can excel, but you're never really going to want to sort of spam Arc Warden or anything like that, because there's many games where Arc Warden is just really bad. If there's enough heroes that can sort of jump in, then he just doesn't do that well. Next, we have Lycan, a hero we've seen a lot at TI, not with the most success, but you know, some success. But he's mostly been played as an offlaner, but he can still work as a mid laner. There's not really much difference between playing Lycan mid lane and off lane. Lycan is actually kind of good in these 1v1 matchups most of the time, so mid lane is actually kind of a nice role for him. But yeah, this is a hero that's a bit situational again. In good Lycan games, you're going to do well. In bad Lycan games, you're going to be a bit useless. Morphling is really more of a carry, but can definitely be played in the mid lane. Again, if you do that, you want to have some sort of safe laner that's fine with playing a bit lower farm priority and picking something a little bit less greedy, but Morphling can definitely still work. And of course, especially strong, you have some sort of strong combination with an Aghanims, like a Earthshaker obviously would be the ideal combination there. Next, we have Lone Druid, who is a hero that is a very, very, very low pick rate. Also, never picked a TI at all. One of the very small number of completely untouched heroes in TI. But his win rate, when he is actually picked, is very, very decent. By decent, I mean actually amazingly good. However, this is, you know, a result of, you know, Lone Druid spammers picking this hero, specialists, and people just picking this hero into like really good Lone Druid games. So if it's a really good Lone Druid game, Lone Druid is going to be amazing, but most of the time this hero is a bit meh. So he's in B tier here. Pango, we haven't seen him that much in mid, but you know, he's still fine. Why not? OD, kind of a clunky hero. We can do a lot with these combinations with the Meteor Hammer. And yeah, the ultimate is very strong, but the hero does tend to fall off a little bit. And if there's lots of things that can interrupt the Meteor Hammer, he's a lot weaker. So I'm putting him here into the B tier. Razor, very solid hero, nice tempo controller, good in specific matchups against most sort of melee heroes. And usually in this patch, you see him more as a offlaner or as a carry in the side lanes there, but he can still work in the mid lane. Pugna, kind of a odd hero in that you know he does some things really well. He's very strong in lane once he gets the life drain. There's a lot of heroes that you just have to leave the lane once you get life drain. He's strong at taking towers. He's, you know, decent team fighter, like Nether Ward and such, depending on how much that is going to have an impact in games. but he's also rather squishy and tends to fall off, so I can't really put him higher than B tier. Meepo, very situational hero, probably not that strong right now, but he still has decent pick rate with like Meepo spammers and such. But sort of similar to Lone Druid, not really a hero that you can put higher than B tier because he is so situational. Klink's more of a carry hero this patch, and just in general not like amazing, but he has fine win rates, but it's probably more like a carry. Then we have DP, who's just a bit underwhelming. She has actually high win rate, which is surprising. But yeah, rather situational hero. Can also be played in like offlane and such. But she's fine, but she's nothing special. Recommend her. Next, you have the C tier. These are heroes that are a bit below par, but they can still work in the right kind of games. First, you have Dragon Knight, who we've seen actually quite a bit of a TI, and most of that actually in the mid lane role, but his win rates are just so bad. I mean, like, what is this, like 45% win rate? Yeah, also fairly low pick rate, so yeah, this hero is in the C tier for a reason. He's just a bit like underwhelming. It's not that he's bad, he's just very, very reliable and so on, but that's just like nothing special about the hero, nothing flashy, and he just ends up feeling underwhelming in most games. Earth Spirit, kind of a very clunky hero to pick in the mid lane, but it can work. So this is sort of the off-meta spirit for the mid lane. Very aggressive mid laner, and can definitely work, but if you manage to finish out games fast, he definitely falls off a lot as a mid laner. So not really something I would recommend. Then there's Shadow Fiend, a very classic mid laner, but a hero that right now just is not that strong. He has like decent laning phase and especially strong in laning against melee heroes, but he's just kind of awkward with this sort of mix of physical and right-click damage, and they don't really go well together because you have like this channeling stuff with Requiem of Souls, which sort of conflicts with this right-clicking potential, and yeah, the hero just doesn't feel great, and his win rates are not amazing. So I would stay clear of this hero unless you really, really like playing him. Next, we have Sniper, who actually, for the first time in forever, is not terrible. He's still not great, but his win rate is not that far below 50%. And he's actually picked a reasonable amount. And if it's like a good sniper game, you can definitely pick Sniper. And also, like if you're playing in lower bracket, Sniper tends to have higher win rates. So if you're like down there in the trenches, feel free to pick Sniper. But this is primarily about, a little bit higher MMR, 4K, 5K, 6K, and so on and higher. And in those kinds of games, people are good enough at initiating on you that Sniper often feels kind of weak. But there's specific lineups, specific situations where Sniper might still be a good pick. And then with Zeus, kind of similar situation to him. Once people learn how to jump on you, Zeus falls off, but in lower MMRs, he does quite well. Then we have Puck, who you've seen a decent amount of TI, sort of high skill hero, can jump around, make plays, but just if you look at the win rates, it's just not great. So he's down here in the C tier. Next, we have Doom, a hero that we've also seen quite a bit of TI, also sometimes in the mid lane. But yeah, its win rates are just nothing to write home about. So he might work well in competitive games, but in pubs, he's not that great. And Skyrath, kind of a bit of a meme mid laner. You can do it, but he's sort of incredibly aggressive, and like if you just like die once or twice, your game's basically over. And Yeah, it's also a bit of a problem to play this very high tempo hero that can't really deal tower damage. So if you want to play this hero, you need to have some sort of like push lineup around you, or some sort of safe lane like that's really good at hitting buildings, like a TB or something. Because otherwise, you just can't finish games properly. And if you don't finish games, then this hero is definitely going to fall off. Then last but not least, we have the D tier, the heroes that I just would not recommend playing in the mid lane right now. First of all, we have Nature's Prophet, just overall an underwhelming hero outside of competitive play, and likely to remain like that in the future. Just because this hero just benefits so much from like proper communication and proper team play, that this hero is always going to be a bit lackluster in pubs unless he's really overpowered. And then he's going to get nerfed soon, so not really a hero that I would recommend you learn. Next, you have Kotl, who was for a little bit, he was actually a very strong mid laner for a little bit, but then they slightly nerfed his Illuminate damage, which just made it so that he no longer had enough damage with like 2 or 3 nulls to just one-shot waves, and that just made the hero basically non-viable as a mid laner. Now you need like a Kaya or something to really have enough damage to one-shot the waves. And that just removes the viability of this hero as a mid laner, pretty much. Then we have Mars, who isn't even doing all that well as an offlaner in terms of win rate. But as a mid laner, I really wouldn't recommend him. So D tier for me. Alchemist, in general, is just not a very good hero right now. If you do want to run Alchemist, you should probably just chuck him into the safe lane, we're just going to have a little bit of an easier time. And finally, Timbersaw, hero that's overall not very good, and again, more of an offlaner. So mid lane not his best role. The problem is just there's so few trees in the mid lane, and that of course matters a lot for Timbersaw. You do enjoy the solo levels, just getting up, especially those levels in reactive armor, so important. But yeah, I would not recommend this hero. There are, of course, other heroes that you might possibly play mid lane, but these are sort of the main heroes. You might see some like Ops and Dawnbreaker do really well at CI, but this is a very, very niche hero in the mid lane, and I'm not going to cover every single hero that could potentially be played in the mid lane, because really the mid lane is a role where you can play, almost any hero. The question is it good? And in most cases, the answer is no. So I've just been talking about the sort of main mid lane heroes, which is already a fairly long list. So I hope this video has been of interest to you, and if it has, please consider subscribing to this channel. And if you want to have a look at another interesting video, click on the video here on the screen, and all is willing, I'll see you next time.